All right. I think we are set up and good to go. Just checking my mic level settings. Let's get everything loaded up and then we can get started today's jam stream. There we go. Hey, I see Core's here. What's up, Core? Core's redeemed a hydrate and a stretch. And Red Dragon's here. What's up, Red Dragon? Hope you're feeling better today. Hope your Sunday is going all right. All right, let's see. Let me put down some background music and we'll do sort of an intro for what I want to do today. I did sort of come up with a plan for what I wanted to talk about. So let's see. Let me put down a real simple beat and throw in the background so we don't have dead silence. Red Dragon says no, but hey, how are you all? Well, man, again, hope you feel better. I'm doing all right. I can't complain. Hopefully today is productive. All right, let me see. I'm just going to do a simple beat, throw in the background, and we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do today. I think levels on the loop are good. Let me know if I need to tweak anything or if you have trouble hearing me. But looks like it's about where it normally is. All right, let's see. Okay, we'll leave the audio about there. That's a little bit louder than I wanted, but I think that'll be all right. So what are we going to talk about today? So we'll start with the usual basic kind of drills and warm-ups that get everything started off like we usually do. There were a couple things on the sound theory and technique I didn't want to talk about. It's not going to be any sort of new techniques or anything dramatically different, but I wanted to build off of some ideas we've talked about in previous streams and sort of demonstrate some things that are useful tools when it comes to trying to build out your repertoire of sounds and techniques when it comes to creating beats. So we'll talk a little bit about that later, specifically variations and slight tweaks, filters, layering, and techniques. We'll go through all that stuff as part of the sound theory discussion. We will try and do another endurance challenge run like we have done before in the last couple streams. I have personal best time. Where is it? From the last stream, personal best is 13 minutes and 13 seconds. So the challenge will be to try and freestyle for longer than 13 minutes and 13 seconds. And we'll get to that a little bit later. And then after that, we'll be spending the bulk of our time brainstorming ideas for BGM. And specifically, I want to continue to think about some ideas for the upcoming Halloween pack. Now that all of the other stuff is done and released for the moment, the next big project that I want to get progress on would be this year's Halloween pack of weird, spooky-ish tunes for the end of October. And rather than wait till we get to October to scramble and find ideas, I figured we could start talking about some things now and get some things together so I won't be under the gun to get that done at the last minute. Hey, Iconic is here. What's up, Iconic? Welcome to the jam stream. Hope you're doing well. I'm actually kind of surprised to see some of you folks here because it's one of the rare occasions where Wazzy and I are streaming at the same time. It looked like she went live an hour ago, and I think she's must be starting earlier than normal on a Sunday. So I kind of expected people to be on her stream, not here. But that's fine. It doesn't matter. I set this time because it's easiest for me to stream a little bit earlier in the afternoon. And I don't have any schedule today, so we can go for as long as we need to. Iconic says, I'm well. Hope you is good. Yeah, I can't complain. I woke up more than an hour before the stream, which is good. Okay, sound check and everything is good. Mic settings look good. So we will turn the background off and get started on some warm-up stuff, and then we will go right into the agenda for today. So what I'm going to do is run through a few basic drills, get all the blood circulating in different parts of my facial anatomy, and then we'll do that for a little bit, and we'll go straight into discussion on technique and sound theory. So as usual, like I always say when people are on these streams, feel free to let me know if you guys have questions or want clarification on anything I'm doing, especially once we get to the sound theory discussion. Feel free to stop me and we can talk about any questions you might have. And I see Iconic has hit us with a preliminary hydrate. I don't have fuel today. I have water. Generally, when I'm doing beatbox stuff, I try and drink stuff that's not kind of acidic or is going to affect my throat. So we got water. Lots of water. So, all right, let's do some warm up. All right. that will do for warm up. It's already getting warm today. I'm going to be sweating profusely by the time we're done with the freestyle challenge stuff, I'm sure. I cannot wait for fall weather. All right, let me change the caption. We will go into some discussion about sound theory and technique. And we'll leave that there for a bit. So on the topic of sound theory, like we've discussed on these jam streams in the past, one thing we talk about is different variations or slight tweaks you can make to different techniques in beatboxing that are going to change the sound that you make whenever it is, whatever it is you're doing, and slotting into a pattern or routine and using to shape the sound of whatever it is you're doing. And we've talked a little bit about this in the past. I've kind of gone through different sort of sub techniques or variations, but I wanted to spend some time kind of explaining the rationale and kind of the technique itself for what changes how sound is perceived, or how sound is perceived by people when they're listening to it, from when it's coming out of your mouth to when the listener is hearing it. Sometimes the differences are subtle and sometimes they're pretty dramatic. And so I figured a good sort of extension to the idea of mixing up techniques, creating variety, and making sure that you're not just sort of pigeonholing yourself into one type of sound would be a good discussion for today. So that's what I've sort of structured the sound theory and technique discussion around. So we talk about subtle variations like mouth position for a lot of sounds, where whether it's lips and you're moving different positions of the lips around, or like a looseness or tightness of different parts of anatomy when it comes to altering how sound comes out. Those are sort of the building blocks for doing variations or texturing, especially for bass type sounds. So I think that the easiest place would be to start there, since I think there's a decent amount of things to say on the topic of altering a bass sound as it comes out to make it different, make it sound different, hit different on the ear or on a mic. So really simple example is what I did for part of the warm-up, which is just sung notes. And like anybody can do with no real training, maybe more musical training if you want to be able to hold pitches and be consistent with notes. But just a regular sung note functions perfectly fine in beatboxing, and you see that quite a bit. It's very common, and you can use it for bass lines, melodies, all sorts of stuff. But we're going to look at it specifically from a bass perspective here, because I'm not a singer. I don't sing professionally or anything like that. I'm not trained professionally. But if we think about a bass line, maybe a low neutralish note, kind of like that's a hummed note. My mouth is closed. All right. And the sound is essentially coming from my vocal cords and kind of out of my nose. If I wanted to direct it more towards the nasal passage, because I wanted to, let's say, do sounds at the same time, you could do that and push it into the nasal cavity and go from to more of a it doesn't change the pitch or anything, but the way the sound's coming out is primarily the airflow rather, is going through the nasal cavity, and then people who are really good can basically hum and do beats at the same time using just mouth pressure from their lips, because you can't breathe, and you can't breathe differently than you're singing, if that makes sense. But if we take that idea of a hummed bass note and kind of apply it to the warm-up we were talking about before, you could do something where it's just like a string bass, kind of similar to the guitar to bass preset on the loop station, and lay that down as your bass track. So like the real simple example we did, or even, Under the Ground, the very first BGM track I ever made. It has the beat that goes I'm not doing the hats for simplicity here, but that's the basic beat. And then when the bass comes in, it goes and the remixed version of the track that I've uploaded recently has got that a lot more clean. Instead of it being like a throat bass, it's just a guitar to bass, heavier low end electric bass sound, and you just got the and it has more low end because it's got that effect added onto it. Well, when you're talking about variations to that bass sound, something as simple as mouth positioning changes the way that sound comes out. And we see this in a lot of things that I do, and that's why I wanted to point it out. A really simple way that I like to add a distortion or a texturing to the bass note is just to keep my lips slightly open, just a tiny, tiny amount, like barely a crack, and get a little bit of vibration on it. It's not like a lip bass, which we'll talk about a little bit later as another potential change in the sound. But if we just take the and open lips a little bit and sort of force the air through that narrow part, it goes from to starts to buzz a little bit. And depending on what kind of distortion you're looking for, you can just keep it like that, or you can even push it into a throat bass to get that reverberating kind of rattling texture and get it to have more of a distortion. And that's how it goes from to you can tell there's three sort of increasing levels of distortion and how the sound changes. Iconic says, I like your funny words, Magic Man. Thank you, Iconic. I always try and be entertaining and also educational when it comes to talking about stuff. I'd hate to bore you folks. That's definitely not the purpose of what we do here. And so if we think about the levels of distortion, again, we went from level 1 with no distortion, we can call it level 2 with a little bit of vibration just from the lips, and then level 3, which is adding a throat bass, so the distortion is coming from the lips and from the throat. Level 4 actually uses lip bass as a much more heavy distortion on top of that, and you can actually back off on throat bass. You just do a sung note plus lip bass, and it's a different type of distortion. Problem is I suck at it, so I'm going to do my best to try and demonstrate it here, what I'm talking about, and you can kind of hear the difference. Iconic says, not boring at all. It's really interesting, even though I only know some of the words. Well, that's fine. I don't expect anybody to have some sort of mastery over the terminology. Hopefully, as I talk about these things on these jam strings, in the future as we do them, some of the words you hear more often will just become familiar. And so some of the terms I use will stick. I'm not expecting anyone to write a thesis on this stuff, but if you ever decide to get into beatboxing, you'll have sort of a knowledge in your brain already of things that we've talked about. And you could say, when he talks about doing distortion or texturing techniques, he's talking about how to change sounds so that they sound differently depending on what effect you're going for. So it's stuff like that. And that's fine. Some people might tune in here and just want to hear me talk about stuff and not intend to become beatboxers, and that's fine too. This is sort of my way to help reinforce my understanding and also just have that discussion with all of you folks about this thing that I do. And by talking about it and explaining it, it makes me understand it better. So if we think of 3 levels of distortion on a simple bass type note, the 4th one uses a more aggressive lip buzz, which is the lip bass. And it's combining that with the sung note, and the distortion is primarily coming from your lips, not your throat, like a throat bass. So if we take it's probably easiest for me to go from the throat bass and then push it into like a lip bass. I'll see what makes the most sense. But instead of going for I'm going to push it, try and tighten my lips up a little bit to get the actual lip bass and see if I can hold the pitch at the same time, because that's what the sound kind of does. It's combining 2 different parts. So let's see if we're going. That's sort of a hybrid, and it's probably as close as I'm going to get consistently. But if we compare the throat throat bass to the lip throat bass combined, it sounds like 1 or level 3, level 4, and you really hear that distortion a lot stronger. And I think probably the most versatile thing about lip bass is that you can really move around with the different pitches and play with harmonizing effects. And the tricky thing about that is knowing note-wise and notation-wise where the lip note is going and then where your voice is going to kind of octave or harmonize it. And I'm not good at that because I don't know music theory. But if I can demonstrate how I've been practicing lip bass, because again, this is not a technique I use a lot. I'm trying to get better. If you've ever played a brass instrument, like a trumpet, trombone, tuba, baritone, sousaphone, French horn, anything like that, you'd be familiar with the idea of buzzing, which is creating a really tight buzzing sound from your lips that goes through the instrument, and then that's how you play the instrument. It's a very unnatural feeling because no one is walking around every day on the street just going, you don't do that. And hearing some of the pros like Kindo, one of my favorite beatboxers, explain it, part of it is learning that technique if you've never played an instrument. I think he's a tuba player by trade, so he knows how to do that already. So his control over that buzzing is very, very tight and very, very precise. I used to play trumpet a long time ago, but I don't anymore. So I'm having to kind of relearn and retrain my lips to be able to do this thing for beatboxing that I used to do for a wind instrument. But if we think about the idea on lip bass, and hopefully I can demonstrate it better than the last time I tried this, because I feel like my example wasn't very good last time we talked about it. If we take that buzzing sound and then just try to play around with where the lip pitch, the note from just your lips is going, it might sound something like, okay, without voice. It's actually easier for me to do it with voice, and I don't know why that is. But if we do it with voice and try and zero in on one pitch, it might be something like, and then by tightening your lips, you're increasing the pitch of the buzzing note, and then you change it accordingly with your voice to move around the pitch, and it's more of a musical and melody-driven technique. And so you could take it and go, and then the technique involves separating the pitch from the buzzing to create harmonized notes. I've mentioned before a really popular and incredibly talented pro beatboxer from the States named Gene Shinozaki. His lip bass is so perfectly controlled that he uses it as one half of a melody, and then he harmonizes the other half with his voice, and he creates some insane melodies with just this simple technique. And it's very controlled, and that's what I'm trying to get to, because doing just the buzzing sound on its own, I guess lower is a little easier for me to control. Getting that so that it's not kind of warbling in pitch and going all over the place and just a straight constant note is the end goal, because when you have that level of control, you can do the sound all day. You can control where the buzzing pitch goes, and then you just add your voice wherever you want, and it's really, really cool. It's incredibly powerful, and not a lot of beatboxers really do that these days. I think a lot of the emphasis is on heavy sounds, heavy basses, inward basses, vibration basses, lip roll, sub basses, and all that. And I feel like the melodic beatboxers are a little more in the minority. They're not non-existent. There's some really, really talented folks out in the scene who use a lot more singing and melody stuff in their beatboxing, and that's really cool to listen to. It's a very different style. I have female beatbox champ Kayla Milady, who's from East Coast, I believe. She also does really good melodic stuff with her voice when she's beatboxing and sings. P-Wad from, I think, Uruguay uses a melodic bass, which and is another one that I'm learning. I think it's called vocal bass last I checked, but it uses the uvula, if interestingly enough. If you want to talk about anatomy that you never use on a day-to-day basis, the uvula to create a distortion, and you layer that with your voice. No throat distortion or anything, just a sung note and a uvular rattle to create a really distorted melodic bass. And I was practicing it for a while and I kind of forgot. I should get back to that so I could show you folks on stream. It is a crazy technique, and when you get really good at it, it sounds like a synthesizer bass synth note, and it is very, very powerful and great for melodic stuff. So I'm making a note to work on the vocal bass. It's not hard. It's just kind of a conditioning thing because it feels weird. You're essentially using your uvula to vibrate against like the back of your tongue. And no one does that on a day-to-day basis. No one does anything with their uvula, a little punching bag in the back of your throat. But by doing that and getting that control, you're creating a distortion that your voice is layering over, and that's how you're getting this distorted bass. I can't really do it too well, otherwise I demonstrate it. I will try and get the basics clean enough for the next jam stream so we can talk about it. But for me, it's weird because the vibrating sensation on the uvula is weird, and if I do it too much, it makes me gag. So I think that's just training, getting used to having that level of sensation, and then your uvula will get used to it and it won't bother you. So I'll have to keep in mind, because that's an interesting technique, and I forgot that I was practicing it. There's so many other things I'm working on. But if we think about other techniques for variations, altering a sound just based on slight changes to mouth position, any sort of part of your anatomy that's going to change the way the sound comes out. One sec. Who's blowing me up? Another one has to do with what I've been kind of experimenting with on vibration bass. So like we've talked about before, my favorite type of bass that I've been really drilling and trying to get good at is vibration bass. And that's the lower in the throat, more open resonating cousin to throat bass. And that's the one that sounds like, if we go from a throat bass, and we drop it down, and then we drop a little even further and open the throat up, we get the vibration bass, and it goes from to Hey, Med's here. What's up, Med? Welcome to the jam stream. I see you're hitting me with a hydrate. I will drink some more of my water. I hope your day is going well. And so if we think of the vibration bass itself, open mouth would be something like that. Open mouth, it would sound like and similar, but you have more of a vibration resonance because your mouth is open. Okay. One thing I've been messing with that I'm going to probably be doing in freestyle, because it's something I want to practice more, is just raising the tongue into the airway as the air is coming up, because vibration bass is coming from the middle lower part of the throat, and if your mouth is closed, it is directing the sound through your nasal cavity, and that's where it's coming out. If you open your mouth, it comes out of your mouth logically. Med says British Raku. That's right. I can offend all of my UK viewers by terribly butchering a British accent. Hey, Red Dragon's here. Red Dragon has redeemed small Raku. All right. I will put myself down here, right up against the mic, and we will turn the timer on. And we'll see how long it takes me to forget. And so going back to the idea of raising the tongue into the airway. Yeah, Red Dragon, I got you at the beginning. I thought you left, but thanks for hitting us with Redeem. Red Dragon is still here hanging out and chilling. And hopefully your day improves. Or at the very least, hopefully I don't make your day worse. That would be bad. So we talk about vibration bass. What I've been messing around with is we're doing like the that resonant sound and having it come out of the mouth. If you raise your tongue up into the airway, then the sort of distortion gets a little bit weird. And so I think the best way is just to show you folks what I'm talking about. So if you have one note, maybe it's something like, and then I raise my tongue up to the back in sort of the way of the sound. It goes from to, and it basically is cut off because my tongue is in the way, and it's subtle. It's not dramatically different, but it's the distortion hits a little bit different when the sound is coming out. So again, and so the distortion technique I've been messing around with is just moving the tongue around in that position to change the way the bass texturing sounds. So you make it something like, and then you can just drop the tongue out of the way to change it again. So you might go from, and so the whole point is you have all these sort of slight variations on the bass sound, and it's all just done by moving your tongue up, down, side to side. It really does affect the way the sound comes out, and that's pretty neat. That's one of the things I like about the sung basses. Anything that comes from the throat is it's very heavily dependent on what your mouth is doing, you know, whether it's your lips, tongue, anything else as simple as just opening, closing, or moving something slightly in your mouth anatomy changes the way the bass sounds come out. And that's sort of the idea of applying variations to sounds, because you could do a sound the same way all the time, but eventually it's going to kind of pigeonhole your sound. If you always just do high throat bass for everything, you know, just like a, and that's all the only type of bass sound you ever do, then people are going to say, well, that's the only sound this person knows how to make when it comes to basses. But as you sort of experiment around with different ways to change the sound slightly and just sort of hard code it into your brain when you're trying to put together a pattern or a routine, then having all these tools on the fly means you can switch different aspects of your sound up really frequently and easily, and then it just gives you more tools. You know, the whole point of experimenting is to give yourself more tools to use in beatboxing. And so taking the idea of changing really subtly how a sound is created, let's move away from basses and move on to other types of sounds that you have in the basic beatbox arsenal that you can apply these variations and slight tweaks to in order to change. So let's talk about snares. One of the key main instruments in the sound set for percussion or rhythm, you have a snare. And what I want to sort of highlight as a kind of extension of this discussion on variations is what I'm calling just a bass snare. I don't know if this technique has a formal name because it's not really a dramatic difference in technique. I just don't hear people do it very often. So this is a slight variation of the PF snare, one of the ones I use all the time. And the PF snare sounds like, and then be careful I'm not pointing directly at the mic here. Sounds like a regular snare hit on a drum head. Pretty dry, doesn't have any sort of hollowing or resonation to it, but a PF snare. You can vary the sort of pitch of the snare itself by opening your mouth up or loosening your lips or dropping your jaw, and instead of being kind of a higher dry, like you kind of relax a little bit, it drops down and becomes a so, or that's a real simple variation of just the PF snare in general. Depending on what I'm doing, sometimes I play around with where it's hitting. It's easier for me to just do the standard one, which is a bit more tight. All right, there's the timer. put myself back. And so that's not the variation I'm talking about. The bass PF snare that I'm talking about is just a hummed note at the same time as the PF snare, and it's very short. It's not a it's a And you do that at the same time as doing the PF snare, just a PF snare plus a And instead of you get and it sounds like a synthesized bass note layered underneath the hit, the strong percussive hit of the PF snare. So if you think of two simple beats, one without it, one with that bass added in. Without it, you might get you add in that slight bass hit on top of it, you get and to me, that bass PF snare sounds kind of similar to what you hear in video game sounds, like 8-bit. You think of like Mega Man music, you hear that all the time, and I think it's more layered. It's not like they're combining the instruments into one. It's just there's like a bass note layered at the same time as a snare, but you don't have like a regular drum set snare sound in 8-bit MIDI type songs. It's all synthesized. But taking that idea is just an interesting way to mix up how the sound is hitting on the mic. And I need to remember to do that more often because it's, again, not one I hear a lot. It's not hard. It's just vocalizing a note at the same time as you're doing a and in theory, if you were doing multiple snares or multiple snare hits in a rhythm, you could change the melody of that bass note and have it moving instead of just being it might be like and it'd be kind of like a synthesized note is moving at the same time as the snare hit, which is interesting. I don't know if I've ever heard someone do something quite like that. I should probably try and put that into a routine just to try something a little bit different. And so for snares, on PF snare, that's the most noteworthy variation I can think of. For an inwards K, to me, the variations all involve kind of the crispness or shortness of the snare. This is the one that's done inhaling a little bit. And so you might get a real sharp note by closing your mouth after you make the sound, and you get if you want it to be a little more of a sustained snare hit, you can not close your mouth and cut the airflow off as quickly, and maybe even give it more of a breathy sound to it. So you might get and so the variations are really kind of more of duration. It doesn't really do anything to the pitch because it's done in kind of one specific type of motion. So there's not really a lot of room to, pitch it up or down. Iconic says, got to go. Sorry I couldn't stay longer. Best of luck jamming. Much love to you, homie. Take care. All right, Iconic. Thanks for stopping by and hanging out. I appreciate you popping in as always. We will keep plugging along for a while, but hope the rest of your Sunday goes well, and I will catch you in the next stream. I haven't figured out when I'm doing my streaming schedule for next week yet. Next week's going to be weird because my brother is coming into town, and so the end of the week I'm going to be busy, so we might be doing like Monday, Wednesday, Sunday. We'll see. I kind of want to get back to Breath of Fire tomorrow, but we'll see. I'll figure that out, and it'll go up on Twitter later, whatever the schedule is. So let's see. Going back to the idea of variations on snares. Okay. So inwards K, mostly duration. Can't really do a whole lot with that one. Outwards K is a little bit different because the sound isn't made with any sort of air. There's no lung power in the outwards K, which sounds like similar to the inwards K. You can open and close your mouth in different intervals to change sort of the duration of the snare. You can't really make it breathy because, again, there's no air power being used. But if you wanted to do a standard one without any sort of sharp cutoff, it'd sound like. And if you kind of clamp down with your mouth, you get it to cut off and be more. You can actually pitch this one up to be kind of more like a snap if you just sort of tighten up the corners of your mouth. This is hard to describe without you seeing my face, but the regular one is just forcing the air out from the sides of your tongue in a sharp single motion using tongue and mouth pressure. If you tighten your tongue up and force it through a kind of smaller gap, then it becomes a sharper hit, and it goes from to subtle. It's very subtle in a pitch, if you will, for a rhythmic sound. But if you wanted to change how that snare is coming out, then all you have to do is just adjust that tightness, and then that's how you're going from to. And see, can I go higher? And that's about it. So again, really more mouth position, and then tightening up a little. And it varies up. The snare doesn't sound the same. But the variation I wanted to talk about is what I'm calling like a throat bass case snare, just simultaneous bass snare, kind of like we did with the PF snare, but you're using a throat bass note at the same time as the outwards K. So if the throat bass note is and the K sound is just a, you're essentially doing a K bass note, and it would sound like. And again, this isn't changing the technique, it's just layering two at the same time. And so the variation goes from to. And the way I use this is to have the bass note actually move. Usually it'll descend because that's my default for bass sounds. And it'll just go from one note and then go down like. But if you combine it with a case snare, instead of having it be separate, it's happening at the same time. And so the sound, when you're doing that descending bass note at the same time as the snare, sounds like. And by using your mouth to kind of change the shape, I'm doing like an O with my lips. It's going from. It's going like ew. And then you're doing that at the same time as the hit. So the snare hit is happening at the same time as the bass, and the bass trails off and follows after it. So what I've done in beats before would be something like. And it's, again, simple idea, but it's just doing two sounds at the same time because your mouth is doing the snare, your voice and lungs are doing nothing. So you can take that air power and apply it to a sung or a distorted bass note and layer it at the same time, and that's how you're getting a. And that is something that people, I think, just pick up as they experiment with beatboxing. It's not something that's really taught. They don't just sit here and go, okay, we've learned PF snare, you've learned a bass sound, put them together and make a beat. Maybe some teach that way. I didn't learn that way. I learned the sounds individually, and then eventually I learned that, oh, I can do certain ones at the same time because my mouth isn't doing, or my mouth or lungs aren't doing everything at the same time, so I could do more than one thing. So it's kind of like a simultaneous technique. You might learn, and you learn, or like a, and then you put them together, it would be like. And it's figuring it out, putting it together, and kind of Frankenstein monstering the idea of a pattern and then fleshing it out into a routine. And then next thing you know, you've got a song. And variations are a great way to give yourself tools and just other options to use in your beatboxing repertoire. And so let's see, we talk about the case snares, PF snares, BGM, the spit snare, the really sharp clap one. That one is a little bit tougher to vary because it's a really specific motion. You are clamping down on your lips and letting a small burst of air come out. Is a real quick and basic description of that snare. But you're using a short controlled burst and clamping down. So instead of that sound babies make, you're just clamping down and forcing the pressure out through your lips and then snapping the end of it. And it goes from to, and the sharpness comes with practice. In the beginning, it's going to be messy, but as you practice more, your ability to cut that note off and make it a real sharp, clean hit improves, and it goes from kind of a to. And so variations on this one, to me, don't really apply as much. But for me, the variation with the BGM or spit snare is speed. Being able to do it rapidly and in sequence so that you can mix up things in a rhythm. So if we think about doing it on the quarter note, just a eighth note is a little bit tougher because, again, you're having to reset that mouth position each time you want to do the snare again. And so you might get, that's eighth notes. 16th notes, you're not going to be able to do as readily because you're having to cut off that airflow and then reset and do it, even faster in double time. Rather than reset, you could do a air tonguing technique. It's the closest way I can describe it in musical terms. But you keep one stream of air flowing and you're using your tongue to break it up instead of clamping down with your lips each time. So instead of, and you're trying to go faster than that, instead of going, which you can do, but it's very, very hard. And I'll talk about another way people get sort of rapid speed BGM snares. What I've kind of experimented around with, and I've done it on some beats before, is you just have that airstream going constantly and use your tongue to break up the note to get that rapid succession of 16th notes. And it would sound like, and that's not me resetting my mouth and doing the snare each time. It's basically just one stream and my tongue is breaking up the 16th notes instead. And so that's how you're getting a, but I can't do it for very long because it takes a lot of pressure to do that. And so it's a variation, right? If you wanted to have a line of really sharp clap type snares, you can do that. You don't even have to do it in a run. If you wanted to do a double BGM or double clap, instead of doing a, which doable, not too difficult once you practice it enough. But if you want to do it faster than like, which is a 30-second note, I think, that for me is easier just to do with one burst and you break it up with your tongue. So instead of, you can tell how it's muddy if I'm trying to do the snare back to back versus using your tongue. To me, that's a little bit easier way to do it, but everybody's going to be different depending on how they learn the BGM. But the other technique, I think Collapse and River, two really, really skilled pro French beatboxers, they use a different type of triplet pattern to get rapid BGM snares. And I'm not too good at it. I can do it slowly, but not fast. River, the vice champion of last year's GBB, second place, has one of the most insane spit snares of anybody in the game. It is short, sharp, clean, and he can do it at the speed of light. The dude's insane. He's very, very, very talented. But the technique, as far as I understand it, actually creates like a triplet type sound in between the two snares. Hey, Sponsor Man's here. What's up, Sponsor Man? How you doing today? Welcome to the Jam Stream. Hope your Sunday is going well. We're talking about beatbox sound technique and theory. And after this, we're going to try and break our personal best for the freestyle record before we go into BGM brainstorming. Feel free to sit back, relax, listen to the funny mouth noises, and let me know if you have any questions. And so talking about rapid spit snares, the way they do it that I've seen broken down is doing a snare plus a kick plus a snare like a BTB. So it's essentially a triplet. So the regular bass drum kick BTB sounds like, and you use that to create rapid kick patterns in a triplet. So pretty handy for doing really fast beats, right? But you can do that with the spit snare, and you do that by doing spit snare plus like a little bit of an exhale, like a kick, and then another spit snare. So it would be snare, B, snare, essentially. And I'm assuming they get so quick with that the middle note becomes so minute that it's basically just a break to create a really fast pattern. So again, if you think, you speed it up a little bit and condense it, it goes from to and I think you just kind of try and lessen the middle B note to where it's just kind of like an air burst in between, and then that gives you sort of the faster rapid triplet pattern. I just suck at it, but it's a really interesting way to mix up how you're stringing together these triplet or multiple clap or BGM snares. So if you think about in a beat, maybe like something like that, and then you have these rapid snares hitting. And if you compare that to the kind of just tongue airflow interrupting one I was talking about earlier, let's see, example, that's just two. One thing that I was messing around with when I figured out this was easier for me to do when it comes to doing the rapid snares, the beat would be something like, and is the double snare with just a tongue interrupting the airflow instead of, to me it's faster. I don't know. I think that everyone's going to be different when it comes to how they structure and use the technique to create the sound they want. So looking at the clock, we are just about an hour. I think I will go ahead and move on to the freestyle portion of the stream, because I do want to sit down and devote a lot of time today to discussing and brainstorming ideas for BGM. Like I mentioned at the start of the stream, I'm going to be brainstorming ideas for the upcoming Halloween pack of BGM songs. So we'll be trying to create some spoopy and eerie ambient type BGM tracks as part of the end goal. I see Red Dragon says, be right back. All right, dude. We'll be here. And so we'll get to the BGM stuff in a bit. But first, as we started doing 2 streams ago, I am going to attempt to beat my personal best freestyle record of 13 minutes and 13 seconds. So here's how it's going to work. I'm going to put the challenge timer up. And I need to go to my scripts. And I can start and stop the timer on the push of a button. And so what I'm going to do is once I hit go on the timer, it's going to start running. And my goal here is to freestyle for more than 13 minutes and 13 seconds. And I basically have to keep coming up with ideas and beats without stopping, drinking water, or just running out of ideas. I can breathe, because otherwise I would collapse and hit the ground. But I can't stop for more than, a second or so to like think or anything else like that. It's basically an endurance challenge on freestyling. And so I'm going to do my best not to look at the time, because that makes it a lot harder. And I'm just going to run through as many beats and ideas as possible, and we'll see if we beat the record. And then if we do, that'll become the new personal best for something that we have to beat on the next jam stream. And so this is a running challenge that's forcing me to get better at freestyling. And I do like the idea of maybe editing these into one big supercut at the end of the year, and then having, an hour of freestyle training and see how much overlap there is, if I default to certain beats and only do the same ones, or if there's any sort of evolution. So we'll see about that. But again, challenge rules. Once the timer starts, I'm not going to be able to talk to chat and answer questions. I will once we're done. So feel free to drop any questions you have while we're doing that. or if people jump on and start, saying hi, I mention this every time just so people know. If people jump on and start chatting and I'm just plowing through different beats and not paying attention, that's why. I'm not going to ask you to just let people know what's going on, but I think people who've been here at least once when I've done this know once the timer's running, I'm doing freestyle stuff, but I just want everyone to know I'm not ignoring chat. I might see your messages, but I won't be able to talk to you until after we stop the clock and figure out where we ended with the endurance round. That being said, I'm going to drink a bunch of water, and we'll see if we can beat our personal best. All right. Timer starting. Let's get it. Sneaking through the shadows. Oh boy, my throat is killing me. All right, let's close this. We have beaten our new personal best. Hooray. Our personal best of 13.3 has now been replaced with our new personal best of 16.28. Okay, let me sit down. Let's sort of take stock, we'll reset, and then we will move on to BGM creation. Let me move my camera and get my chair. One sec. All right. Oh, it's good to sit down. Okay. We can hide challenge timer. That was pretty difficult. Towards the end, my voice was going, just being able to create the bases. I think I could probably have squeaked out maybe a few more minutes worth of routines or patterns, but the real problem was my voice. My throat was so dry because, again, 16 and a half minutes without water and being able to refresh is difficult, especially when you're doing a lot of throat vibration and etc. bases. But we did it. I think towards the end I was slowly starting to fall back into some similar styled beats that we had done before, but we didn't have to stop and pause and reset. So that personal best is going to stay 16.28. I'll say not bad. So let's see, we'll hide you for now, and that'll be our time to beat for next jam stream. Now, let me change my caption. We're going to go BGM brainstorming. Okay, we can relax a little bit, take energy down a notch or two. And now we start thinking about some ideas for spoopy tracks for this Halloween. So I'm going to delete off this basic background track I had created here. And so for this first one, I want to experiment around a bit. Oh, let me move myself up here. I want to experiment a bit with a slower tempo song. We definitely saw that in last year's pack. There's quite a few songs that had a much more slow and ominous sort of tempo. And I don't want to fall necessarily into the trappings of doing just the same thing over and over again. But I like the idea of trying to set a more kind of atmospheric vibe instead of, like a fast energy hype type vibe like we've done on some other tracks. So I think I'll start with a kick, but I want to do a distorted kick. Like if we test out our loop capture here and we just did something like leave the volume about there, and folks can let me know if it's too loud and you can't hear me over the BGM. So this is a pretty standard, just regular bass drum kick. It doesn't have a ton of low end on it. It's pretty simple. But if we were to take that sound and add a distortion over it, I think we could probably come up with a different sounding kick. And I want to do this for the other instruments in the track and rhythm as well, because the regular sound set is going to sound the same across all the tracks if we don't sort of tweak it and do variations like we talked about earlier. So let me see what kind of input C distortion I could put over it. I also have A and B if I want to take off dynamics or EQ. So let's see what we've got. A reverb, if we wanted to do kind of an echoey kick. Maybe turn that down. Do something like that would give us kind of more of like an echoey reverb, almost like a footstep echoing in a big open area. If we were to do our same beat again, what would that sound like? That's pretty subtle. Let's try and up it a bit. Okay, that's definitely more. Okay, I actually like that. We're not going to do a rapid rhythm quite that fast. Let me turn this off. But I think I want to do a reverb kick. Now, how do we want to set up the rhythm itself? As I was thinking, maybe a slower version of that rapid sample one that we just captured. So maybe something like. And slow it down even more. Like a staggered triplet-ish type thing. So let me turn on reverb. See if we can capture it and just see what it sounds like. Okay, I think I can actually shorten the measure a little bit. Whoop. Okay, so I turn the reverb off. We have a slightly echoey bass kick that is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, repeat, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like that. Okay, that's a good start. What if I want to add something under those 3 kicks to give it a bit more of a lower end, but I don't want it to overpower the reverb. So what if I back off from the mic and do like a guitar to bass throat kick underneath it just from far away, like maybe over here, like a. See, that'll even pick up. Okay, it will pick up, but I think I need to be even further away. Don't want to be very subtle in the background. But what happens if we add guitar to bass on top of that? Does it boost the low end without making it too loud? Let's find out. All right, let me turn my dynamics back on so I can talk again. I think that'll work. It sounds kind of like a heartbeat, which I've done on a couple other ones. I wanted to make it a little more subtle. I didn't want it to be aggressively on top because you can still hear a bit of echo from the kick. I want to have a similar type of effect on the snare and maybe the hats too. So I'm not too worried about having the echo just purely be on the kick. But this is a pretty good start. So let's save this. Now for the, I guess we do hats next.
Let's go.
Oh my god, that's loud. Good lord, we got a raid from Wazzy of Team Toxicure. Hello raiders, welcome, welcome. We are creating BGM. Oh lord, look at all the follows. First chat from Luna the Darling, the kind Jacob. Follows from Pillowcase 638. What's your opinion on pillows? I love pillows. Without them, my head would fall off. Labyrinth says ninja. Serpent King 17. Who said I'm ninja? Do I look like a millionaire? Wazzy says, hey ninja, love the masterclass. Oh boy, everyone's blown up chat. Welcome folks, welcome. Thank you for popping in and saying what's up. You guys shocked me so much I went straight off of the camera. All right. What were my redeems? Starlight said no sound alerts. I was hearing the sound alerts from all of the follows and everything else. That's weird if they're not coming through on your end. I see Kind Jacob redeemed a swear timer. Let me get these one at a time, folks. I'll put that on here. Timer is running. Matter Mad Dog followed. Thank you. Horribles followed. Kind Jacob. Bugsy. Welcome, folks. That's nuts. Thank you, Wazzy, for bringing your crew here. Hopefully, now we have plenty of brains and brain cells to contribute to our ideas. So what are we doing? What I do on these jam streams, in addition to talking about beatboxing and beatboxing stuff, is we will sit down with my loop station here and we will brainstorm ideas for BGM tracks to create and release for content and for use amongst my streaming and content creation peers. So that's what we're doing now. We were working on some initial ideas for Halloween tracks. But before we do that, I see Sourlight has redeemed Drop a Beat. Let me pause this. And the redeem for Drop a Beat for folks who are new here. When that gets dropped, oh, well, Small Raku as well. Boy, there's so many redeems. Let me know if I miss any mods. I'm not used to a huge flood of people in here. And I will reset the timer. You get bonus time for Small Raku. All right. So, drop a beat. What does that mean? Whenever someone redeems that, I gotta stop what I'm doing and drop a freestyle beatbox beat on the spot. So we will do that. Let's make sure everything is off. And we will see what pops out. So again, welcome to everybody. This beat is dedicated to all the cool folks from the crew that are stopping by to say hi today. So thank you. bass. Switch. All right. How much time we got left? 2:47. I will leave small mode on for now, and we will return to our brainstorming. And I see people are making use of the emotes. I'm glad they work. Follower emotes. It took like 3 freaking months, but we got them. Thanks for all the glow sticks. Again, hope you all enjoy your stay amongst the Space Bees. Much welcome. And much thanks again to Wazzy. I hope your stream went well, by the way. I think you're doing art. Hope your art went well. Okay. Before we were so pleasantly interrupted by all the nice people, we were brainstorming ideas for spoopy BGM tracks. Again, this is for the Halloween pack that's coming up in a couple months now. So let me turn the beat back on. And we'll leave it about there. Hopefully you folks can hear the loop in the background. We have a slower, almost heartbeat-esque beat. And what I was thinking about doing before everyone jumped on was, what kind of snare or hat combination do we want? So to give everyone an example of how this works, the loop station device that I have all my sound hooked into, my mic and all that, captures sounds that are input through it via mic, and it loops them on a track, and it repeats, kind of like a drum machine. And I have 5 tracks in front of me. One of them currently has the beat, and we have the ability to overdub and layer on top. So just for example, let me save this first real quick. Folks who've been here before know that I have deleted my work in the past, and that's embarrassing. So if we were to take our existing rhythm track, I'll boost it a bit so you can hear. And let's say I wanted to add just hi-hats, just as an example here. We could overdub this existing track and add the hats into the layering of the mix. So it might be something like... That's not a really good on rhythm example, but now, in addition to all the other things you're hearing, the hats are layered into the mix. Now I'm not going to leave that on there because it sounds terrible. But in addition to that, we have other loop tracks rather, of 5 that we can also put different instruments, different sounds. There's the timer. We'll put ourselves back to regular size, not fun size. And so we have a lot of options on how to construct this track that we're doing sort of in pieces, instrument by instrument, and all that. So what I was figuring out was a distortion effect to add over the hats. It's going to change how they sound, because a regular hi-hat, for those of you that know how to play drums, is just like a T sound. You have a closed hat, which is an open hat, which would be like, and then obviously have cymbal crashes and whatnot. But for just hi-hats, I kind of want to see if I can get a muffled or distorted version of a closed hat. So I was looking at my settings, let's see what sort of effects we can add as part of the distortion. I wonder what a lo-fi hat would sound like. If we turn lo-fi on, it creates a fuzz distortion, kind of like you hear on guitars. And the higher you turn up the intensity of the effect, the more distorted it sounds. I wonder if we go super high on lo-fi, what that sounds like on hats. It makes it sound like static a bit, which is interesting. At almost 100%, it sounds more like feedback. Like the track has had this really heavy static effect. I think that would be too high. So I'm gonna try and back that off a little bit. Let's see if we can get kind of a muffled, distorted hat sound. And I'm not opposed to the idea of using static here, because again, we want to create a weird sort of ambient track. So let's see. I'm going to back the sound a little bit off. Let's see what we can get. Okay, that gives it a lot less distortion, but I think I need to back off the mic a little bit and make it further in the background. I don't want that fuzzy, distorted hat be overpowering the rest of the instruments. So I'm gonna back off from the mic and try and get it a little bit quieter, and then see if we can get that same 3 hits in pretty much the same place I just put it. So I'm gonna turn lo-fi distortion on and see if we can get that to record. I feel like the distortion is still lost. Maybe I'll up it by another 5. Using undo redo, one of the commands here on the loop station, I'm taking off the last overdub, basically the top layer, just undoing it and reverting it back to the one before that, and then trying to re-record it. So if we go 75% on the distortion, what would that sound like? What I did there is I matched up the hat hits, which have a little bit of distortion on them, to the kick. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, and set it up like that to sort of match. And I turned up my mic input sensitivity to be able to get a louder sound, but then I backed off so I'm not like right next to the mic. I think that'll work. Now, the next question is a snare. I don't know if we necessarily need a snare with the way this rhythm is set up. I'm just listening to it play back and cycle a few times. it might not need a snare, which would be a little bit unusual, but we're not bound to any sort of format. So I might actually just leave the rhythm the way it is. What happens if we reverse it? It sounds like record scratches. Basically, it's playing the looped track in reverse. That's interesting. Okay. Let's move on. I don't want to spend too much time just on the rhythm here. We need a bass line. Usually we go rhythm, percussion, rhythm, and then we go for a bass line to add in and supplement everything else. So, we could do... I should have written down the other ideas that I have. This isn't the first of the Halloween tracks that I've been working on. I've got a couple done. I kind of want a kind of low growling rumble of a bass line, but do I want to do that with lo-fi again? We could do lo-fi guitar to bass, which is that's going to do is basically take a string or electric bass and give it a distortion pedal. So let's try that. I've done that before, but let's mess around with the settings and see if we can come up with something that'll work. So I'm going to turn this on and I won't be able to talk, but you'll hear me messing around with the instrument in the background. So let's see what we can get. All right, let's turn the mic back on. Okay, so what I did there, using the guitar to bass and the lo-fi effect combined at the same time, is I took a really simple series of bass notes. Again, like we're using an electric string bass, but using a distortion pedal to create that sort of fuzz over the top. And putting them together, we have the bass line that you hear here. And I think it's functional. What happens if I reverse that? Oh, it's because of the tail. It gets a little bit of kind of like a scratch on the beginning. If it didn't have that delay, like a half rest and then the scratch, it might actually work as a pretty good inverse bass line. I'm gonna play around with the balance on the mix here. But I think that's actually pretty functional. It's kind of a menacing, like a boss is coming at me type of beat, you know, like a boss intro almost, which that definitely can work. Now, what we do with the song as far as mixing up the structure and doing things like maybe putting a drop or something else, that'll come a little bit later. But What if we added beat repeat? There it is. So in addition to inputs at the instrument level per loop track, we also have the ability to apply effects to the whole series of looping tracks at a song level. And those are the track level effects versus the input level effects. And they're pretty much the same, a mirror of the effects you have at each instrument level, just applied more globally. So one option we have is to take a snippet of whatever's looping right now, rhythm, bass line, and we can repeat it. And it would sound like this. And this is at 50%. If we up it, this is how you do drops, essentially. I don't know if we want to do that for this one because it's not really a high-paced song. We could even slow the repeat down so it's quarter notes instead of eighth notes. But because the rhythm is staggered kind of offbeat, and the section is a little bit weird. It's not just 1, 2, 1, 2. It's 1, 2, 1, 2. Could do something like that. I don't know. I don't normally do drops for these types of songs because they're meant to be a little bit more kind of slow and not kind of that aggressive, but I wouldn't be opposed to the idea. But now, moving on from bass line, we'll save this for now. Kind of like the way that sounds. All right. We need to think of a third type of instrument. I really would like to figure out how to do strings. That's like a string type sound using the commands here. Because like a violin or like an electronic or synthesizer type of string note would be a really good complement to a lot of these things that we work with here on these tracks. I could try and do the sound myself, which would largely come down to my ability to sing and my pitch. Because, let's see, I like a trumpet distortion might be string-like. Something like... Problem is, I have to be able to hold a pitch consistently and then come up with a melody. If we had an actual instrument combination that could do that, it would be a lot easier. Let me take a look at my notes. Where are my settings? Oh, they're not even in here, are they? Let me go pull that up. I wrote down some specific instrument settings that I want to be able to refer to in the future because I knew I'd forget. Let's see where I put them, though. Loop BGM settings. There we go. Oh, not that one. Loop settings. No, not that one. I guess I put those settings somewhere else. Oh, no. Here we go. Ah, here we go. I found them. Okay. So let's see. We've messed around with the pitch bend combination with the reverb. That gives us that sort of buzzing B noise. I've used that a lot. I really am not going to be trying to do that much on these tracks because that's not really the sort of vibe and theme I'm going for. But let's see. Phaser. Which effect was this? The way the loop instrument settings and track level settings work is you have them all set to be able to use on command, and then you can tweak individual parameters within the instrument itself to change how the effect comes out. And I'm still learning because I'm relatively new to the loop station. I'm still learning all the different ways you can tweak settings to change the instruments and make them different. So let me see if I have these settings enabled, and then I can try and figure out what noise it makes. So we want phaser. Oh, it's gonna be hard to see. Great. Guess leaving it at 100. That 100 resonance, 80. Step right off, E level 100. What does that sound like? Oh, it's that one. A kind of bloopy synth. So if I turn that on, you guys are gonna be able to hear me talk because all the distortion is gonna be messing around with the phaser setting, or rather, the phaser setting is gonna be distorting everything that comes into the mic. But I'll try and demonstrate what I'm talking about. I don't know if this is gonna be useful for this particular song we're working on, but let's see. If I try and speak into the mic, it's very garbled. You could sort of probably understand me a little. But if we do different sounds, like let me turn this off when I need to explain what I'm doing. Kicks give it kind of like a bloopy, like a bloop 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 noise. I wonder what clicks or sharp noises do with that. Not much. It's mostly vocalized sounds. It seems really set off this particular effect. I think you could probably take that and what I've seen people use this particular combination of sounds is something like a really unusual, like interrupting synth type noise. Red Dragon says it sounds like you're underwater. Yeah, exactly. It's so heavily distorted at 100% intensity that it sounds like you're speaking underwater. So I don't know if I can necessarily use that for anything here, but it is interesting that it's here. Let's see what else we got. Let me mess around with panning delay. We'll see if we can have this give us an interesting effect. right, this is panning delay. When it's on, normally it causes a stuttering delay in the input, and it also moves it around on different sides of the sound channels. So normally at bass settings, it sounds like someone is sort of speaking like around you, and the sound is sort of bouncing all over the place. But this setting is different. I don't remember what exactly this does, so let me turn it on and see. Ow. I remember what it does. That creates that static distortion. I apologize that was extremely loud. I forgot how to turn it off. So this can be used to create a staticky distortion, and you can play around with the pitch. Let me see if I can do this at a level that's not going to blow everyone's eardrums out. All right, I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to see if I can control that sound a little bit better. Now that I know how to disable it, so it's not just screeching through your speakers. All right, so the time setting in the actual instrument is what controls the pitch. I had to figure that out real quick. So I can turn it off. Basically, we can use that to sort of create a background distortion, and you can control the pitch with it. It's difficult to do, but it does create an interesting sort of sound. I don't know if we can really use it a lot for this, but I'm going to mess around with it and see what we can do. It'd be nice if we had something a little more chopped up. I have an idea. I'm going to mess around with some things. You'll probably hear some weird noises, but if I can get it to work, then I'll come back and explain it. All right, let me make sure everything's back on. I wanted to create something that's kind of like a signal, like an eighth note signal, using that distortion, have it be kind of low and in the background. But that is very difficult to do, I'm noticing. Because what I created, it's just a single flat note. I wanted to have more things broken up. And I think it's because I hit the loop too quickly. So let's see. Let's mess around with this a little more. I think I can leave dynamics on, but I'm just going to need to drop the setting down because it's basically making it loud is what dynamics are doing, I think. So let me try that again. And I'll turn it off if it gets weird. Okay. Still wasn't what I was trying to do, but it's a bit more controlled in the background now. One thing I've done on another track, is an older one we were working on, is I had it create this staticky noise, and then I looped a section that was moving up in pitch using the actual settings to change the pitch of the static. But it's so subtle and hard to hear. It's a little bit difficult to use. So I think I'm gonna leave this one. I'm gonna take this one off. I do like the effect, but I don't think it's gonna work here. Yeah, we'll delete that off. Okay, so the panning delay one is using that static noise. I'm thinking while we're sitting here letting the beat sort of repeat in the background, I'm thinking what another third complementary instrument to the mix would be. We have a pretty aggressive bass, but I'd like some sort of synth on top of that as like a third track. We could try the chime. That is granular delay plus filter, high pass, or just regular filter. Well, I'm gonna mess around with that for a minute. I can't talk when I have those effects active, so again, you'll hear me noodling around with some things, and then we'll see if we can come up with something that's gonna layer in well with these other two. All right, let me turn all my settings back on so I can talk again. Well, I was messing around with this filter chime effect. It's a really neat synth, but it's very hard to control. And I was trying to create a couple notes and layer that in with the bass line and the rhythm. And what I did is something interesting, but I don't know if I'm going to keep it. I feel like it's really close to being what I need, but it's just off by like a half second. Even the reversed version, it's close, but it's not. It's just a little bit off, so that it's not quite in line with the measure start. Because I kind of like the idea of having this sort of weird electronic beeping chime in the background, but it's just off slightly, and I have to toggle a couple different settings in real time as I'm changing the pitch and making that thing move progression wise. It's not like I can sing notes because it's basically triggering the noise off of clicks. So like that's what's causing it to ping, and I have to change the filter setting in order to change the pitch slightly. So let me try again. I had delay on to give it kind of an echoey repeat as well. I don't know if I'm going to keep that. So I'm going to go back and let me see if I can get that a little bit cleaner. I'll delete this. This is filter on. I can still talk, but I think there's probably going to be a little bit of distortion that's coming from the filter. Well, that's fine. Okay. Took a little bit, but I think I got the effect I wanted. All right. Before I do anything else, I'm saving my work. So what did I do? I went into that combination of filter and granular delay, which if you tweak the settings just right, gives it a kind of echoey, mechanical. Sometimes it's chiming if you move the settings a certain way. Other times it sounds kind of like a creaking kind of metallic echo. And I think we can make that work for this. So if we turn it on, it almost sounds kind of like a radar or a sonar because it decays. The first sound is the strongest, and then it slowly dies off on the second and third hit. Reversed, it sounds kind of interesting, almost like a predator noise. But I think we can make use of this. Toothpaste Addict says, it sounds like a giant ant clicking its mandibles. Yeah, it's got this kind of clicking, almost kind of chittering noise with like a little bit of a echo and reverb on it. And it sounds like it's fading in and then fading out on the second and third, which is not what I was trying to do, but I think it'll be functional. So I'm going to keep that. And if we think about structure, I'm not necessarily done with the BGM track, but if we take a look at what we have now. Also, welcome to the Jam Stream, Toothpaste. Hope you're doing well. We've been chipping away at this one for a while. I was trying to get the right additional instrument I wanted for this. But if we think about the structure and how the song would be performed, and we make sure everything is audible, yeah, we're good. So we could intro with this weird sort of distortion noise, and it'd be something like, and then bring in the bass. Bring in the beat. Cut the beat out for a sec. Drop the synth. And maybe kind of alternate between the beat, the bass, and then the synth. And then have two on at a time is kind of what I was thinking. So if we switch. We just have the beat and the synth at the same time. We bring the bass in. Still don't know if I'm going to do a bass drop for this. I think it might be a little bit of a conflict in style. I'm thinking about the... I'll drop this down a little bit so it's not quite so loud. I'm thinking about adding a click to the bass rhythm. We don't have a snare on it right now. It's just a mix of kicks and this kind of fuzz distortion, which is functioning kind of like a hat. But I kind of wonder if we just put like one click in the middle somewhere. If that would be too distracting. I'm gonna try and First, I'm going to save this. That way I can revert it if I don't like it. I'm just going to add it in and see what it sounds like. That didn't come in as loud as I would have expected. I think it's too loud. If I wasn't constructing the song this way with the bass, I think that additional click might actually be okay in the rhythm. But it's a little distracting, and I think it conflicts with the bass line a little bit. I'm gonna take it out. Ooh, okay, I just turned that on the track level effects just to see if I had it enabled on C, on ABC. Slicer. We can make this an alternate second half that switches up the way the song sounds. And I think it sounds pretty interesting. If we don't apply it to the weird like clicking radar synth, but we apply it to the rhythm and bass line, that's interesting. It basically takes it fragments it up, and it makes it more rapid. So it actually sounds like it's changing the pace of the song, even though it's not doing that, it's just breaking it up. I think it's halving the time. I think that's the effect. That's the flanger effect. Okay, let's go back to the beginning, think of the structure. I actually like using the slicer to basically increase the pace of the song artificially as an alternate second half. So if we think about how we're going to structure it, we have two halves, two setups essentially. So when it starts from the beginning, it'd be something like a couple repeat on just the synth. Bring in the bass line. Bring the beat. We cut out the bass. Switch. Something like this. We end after the chopped up version on just the bass line. And then it repeats. Back to the beginning. And then we basically have half one, half two. I think I like the way that sounds. I may make some final tweaks to these BGM tracks before I record them and put them into the pack. But I think we've got a pretty good structure for this one. Now the real question for everyone in the chat today, what I usually do as we're coming up with BGM ideas, in addition to asking for input and suggestions from the chat on things to tweak or add, I also look for suggestions on what to call these. The chat has named a few of my tracks and come up with fun, appropriate names for the BGM tracks. So before we move on, any suggestions for what to call this one? It's a kind of brooding, slow plodding song, so I kind of want to think of something that reflects that. I do like Toothpaste's suggestion about the ant clicking its mandibles. That's kind of an interesting idea. So let's see if anyone has some ideas before we move on, and then I'll make note. I'll make note when I sit down to finalize these tracks later. And I'll usually call out in the description of the actual post online if people have helped contribute ideas and suggestions and whatnot. And I'll turn the track back on in the meantime so we're not in dead silence. I also have a bunch of potential tracks for the Halloween songs I just wrote down as sort of brainstorming too. So if we don't think of anything on the spot, then I'll be able to purpose that list for this stuff as well. Kind of like the idea of making the slicer effect a little less aggressive, so it's not like a beeping cutoff. Instead, it's just a little more subtle, but it's still breaking up the way the sound goes. Sour Lad said, sounds like dripping water in a cave. It does kind of have a kind of subterranean vibe to it. Like a theme you would hear when you're in an RPG exploring a cave dungeon. Let me see if I have any specific names that would fit thematically. Ah. I think I have one for this. This is one I had written down, and it seems to fit. I think I'm going to call this 6 Under. And it's 6 like Roman numeral 6. VI under. Kind of a play on, 6 feet underground. But also kind of a double meaning with like an underground subterranean like labyrinth type theme. So I'm gonna do that for this one. I wanted to use that one because I just kind of like the look of it. That's what we're gonna call this one. This isn't the final version, but yeah, I think that'll work. I need to put a mark on here. So I'll put it in chat what I'm talking about. All right, let's do final save. And let me migrate my settings from a different track. Looking at the time, I guess we could do one more. maybe we can get the basic structure of one started, and then we can call that a stream for today. Let me do this though. I need to go run to the little raku room real quick and fry some chicken. But before I do that, let me turn this back on, and I will go hit the facilities, and then we'll pick up for the last leg here. So we'll turn the track back on. I'll be back in 1 sec. All right. Let me grab, let's see, these settings. What is this? That is a different track. I don't even remember which one that was. Oh, we'll take this one. Put that here. Clear everything off. And save our progress on a brand new track. So now I want to brainstorm some ideas for this next one. Maybe something a little bit different in tempo. I'm not sure if I want faster or slower. Could try faster. This particular BGM pack for Halloween, at least what I've created so far, is a bit higher energy. There's going to be a mix. There's going to be some kind of slower, more ominous songs and some other ones that are a bit more faster but still kind of weird. And so it's going to be a mix. That's kind of my idea for this one. So we could try and do something that's a bit more fast tempo and think about how we're going to make it spoopy. Again, Halloween themed, Halloween inspiration. So what if we did maybe something that's a bit more galloping, but not like the one I just pulled up from the archives? I'm going to start with the kick line and then play around with adding the snares and everything. We'll do it piece by piece like we did on the last one, because then I can control the different effects on the snares and come up with some interesting ideas. So what if we went... that might be a little too fast. Nope, we've done that one before. think it's too rapid. We're not doing like blast beats or anything like that. Oh, I got an idea. Let's try this. I'm going to up the tempo on beats per minute a little bit on this one because I don't want this to sound like Phantom's March from last year. We'll go up to 104 and we'll leave it there for now. I'm just listening to make sure it's looping cleanly. I think it's fine. So now, let's see, we can add a hat over the top. I'm thinking kind of like a maybe go like a CH. Let's see how that works. I think I'm missing one. Yeah. Now, this one I definitely want to add a snare. We could do a muffled outwards K, like a a little bit hard to hear. Still hard to hear. Okay, I'm gonna redo the bass rhythm from scratch, but I'm gonna do it with kicks and the snare. I'll record it at the same time, then add the hats in. I think it's still off by like a half second. So basically the rhythm I'm going to try and loop and capture all at once is, and then that should give me a better bass to start with. Let's see if we can do it. Okay, we need one additional note at the end. There we go. Let's see if we can add some delay on, not delay, some distortion on the hat. I don't think I like the phaser effect. A little too soft. Okay. thinking about adding a throat kick, but I might actually go guitar to bass and just do a regular mouth kick. That might work better. I don't think it actually needs it. I'm gonna leave it the way it is. Alright, I'm gonna try something I've experimented around with a little bit for the bass line. I'm gonna go guitar to bass, and I'm gonna add chorus, and I'm gonna try and do like kind of a ghost chorus. We'll see if I can get it to work. Turn on the effects, and if I can get it to work, then I'll go back and explain what I've done. Alright, I'm going to have to do them separately. I'll do the bass line first, and then I'll go in and do the chorus after that on top of it. Alright, turn dynamics on. Now the real tricky part is going to be putting in a complementary ghost chorus. Do we want it to match the bass line? Want to octave it? I'm going to try a couple things and we'll see if it works. If we turn this on, you can hear how the effect adds a bunch of other kind of voices at the same time. That's what it sounds like if we match pitch with the bass line. I have this on a separate track just to make it a little bit easier to edit. Now, we could try and octave it and add another chorus layer on top of this third track. Which, if I can get the pitch correctly, that might work. Fortunately, I can just undo and redo. So I'm going to try it and we'll see if it works. Pitch was off slightly, but I think the idea might work. We can either try and do a direct octave, or we can try and harmonize with it. There's things I'm not extremely good at, I basically have to sort of guess on where to set the pitch and do it by ear. And if it doesn't sound really dissonant and terrible, then that gets us close for like a harmonizing thing. I'm gonna try, and we'll see if we can get something that works. If not, I might have to work on this more offline and experiment around with pitches. So let's see. I'm gonna turn it on and I'm gonna mess around a little bit. I think there's potential in finding some sort of additional layer to the chorus part. But it's going to take me probably longer than it would take a regular musician who understands pitches and harmonies well to figure it out. But I think it's something we can definitely work with. Let's save our progress. This is a pretty good bass structure and start for this track. I do think it's got a lot of options, but I'm not exactly sure what direction to take it. If I can get the other parts of the Ghost chorus done and make it sound good, then we might not need anything else. And it'll just be a matter of figuring out the structure and how we want to perform the song, as it were, and then that's it. This one actually came together faster than the one before because it's a little more straightforward. It's not quite as weird. Why don't we reverse this? Yeah, that really conflicts. But I do like the pairing so far of the Ghost chorus matching pitch on the bass line. I think that complements decently. It's just be a matter of how I want to add additional voices. I'll try and see if I can get the octave thing to work. If not, I'll try and harmonize, or maybe do both. If I can get a harmonized melody and an octave melody and it all layers together and sounds like a bunch of ghosts singing and not just a bunch of dissonant wailing into the void, that might be something I work with. So we'll see. And I think the beat is fine. I may flesh out some things with this, like maybe make the kick a little bit heavier. But I think that's fine. So again, we have the structure for this one. And as far as names go, I'll kind of placeholder that until I can come up with a bit more of a complete thing. We'll see. Again, I wanted to avoid this one being really similar to Phantom's March, but it's going to be a kind of similar style. So I don't want to do something as kind of hacky as just like Phantom's March 2. That would be really uncreative, but maybe something similar and something appropriate. Alright, so I think that's going to put us at a good stopping place for the jam stream today. We have two fairly developed structure ideas for Halloween tracks that we can put into the mix. Obviously, I've got a little more tweaking and refining to do, but I think it gives me a good starting point, which was the whole reason for the exercise here today. So before we jump off, let me see if there's anyone from the homie list that we can go raid and pass on the love. Oh, I don't know if I caught Hecklejack's follow. My scroll list got kind of muddy and I lost a bunch of stuff. It was right after the drop a beat from Sour Lad. So in case I didn't mention it, Hecklejack, thanks for following. I do appreciate you and all the rest of the crew who came and stopped by. I was not expecting the raid and it derailed my thought process a little bit, but in a good way. So let's see, who's online? Ah, Bean's online. Bean is, of course, playing Final Fantasy XIV. So what we'll do is we'll go raid Bean. We'll send some love his way. Also, shout out to Sour Lad for working on the bot cleanse. Always appreciate it. Alright, let's go ahead and stop this. We will go ahead and go to outro and go raid the Master of Final Fantasy IV Bean. Once again, stream schedule for next week will be up on Twitter for the end of the day today once I figure it out. I'm leaning towards picking up Breath of Fire 2 tomorrow. I have the day off, so I could actually stream earlier, which might be advantageous. I will consider my options, because again, my brother's coming into town next week, so my schedule's going to be weird. We might do Monday, Wednesday, Sunday, and we'll see how that works. Well, until then, thanks again for hanging out, folks, and hope you all have a great evening. Now let us go raid Bean Bun.